J.D. Vance, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta say, man, I was disappointed at first with JD. I can't lie. A lot of people are like, why, Lou? Why? It doesn't matter now. I wasn't familiar with his game. Let me just be very honest. I wasn't familiar with who he really was. And ladies and gentlemen, here he is in an interview. Now he's doing interviews, by the way. Guess who's not doing interviews? Kamala Harris, Tim Walz. They haven't sat down with CNN, but Trump is sitting down. Trump is doing our interviews with the press. He's taking questions. He's doing briefings. He's not even the president. And JD Vance decides to go on CNN. And you know this is going to be filled with nothing but dramatic questions and narrative shifting questions. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, this guy might have been the right pick. I don't know. You guys tell me. Let's start this interview off. You already know how it's going to start. Kamala, Tim Walz, all this crazy stuff, trying to make JD apologize. And I can't lie. I was surprised here. Let's take a listen.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Senator.
Thank
so
you.
Within a week of you being named on the VP ticket, the Democratic nominee changed. And you guys seem to be struggling a little bit with how to approach the new dynamic. How are you approaching your new opponent and the new ticket?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty straightforward.
You see how they started? You see how they started? You guys seem to be struggling with this new opponent. You guys seem to be struggling here. So my question to you guys, are they struggling?
Actually, we're running against a set of policies that I think have failed the American people, and we're running to a set of policies, President Trump's 4 years in office, that I think really succeeded for the American people. And I think that what's different about it, and you're right, Dana, it is different, but what's different about it is that we're running against a different person who a lot of Americans just don't know. And so I think we have to remind people that President Trump delivered lower prices, lower inflation, a prosperous and peaceful world, and also a secure border. And Kamala Harris's policies have produced the exact opposite. Now, that was an easier case to make when Joe Biden was in there because people associate Joe Biden with the policies. But I think Kamala Harris clearly owns the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, especially when we consider the fact that, as we've all learned over the last few months, Joe Biden clearly isn't capable of doing the job. And so I think that drives home that Kamala Harris really has been the one calling the shots. I mean, how could she not? I think Joe Biden doesn't really know where he is.
Kamala Harris has been calling the shots as who?
Well, I think she has to have.
Come on. You see, this is why the media is never honest. You telling me Joe Biden, who's been laying down on the beach, who's been struggling with his words, who had to step down? By the way, a new interview just came out. He basically admits that there was kind of a coup. We'll go through that in just a bit. But if it's not Kamala running the country, then who else? Come on. There's another name that comes up here, but
right? Because if she's not calling the shots, Dana, then who is? And I do think it drives home something that's fundamentally dishonest about the way that Vice President Harris and also a lot of senior Democrats have approached this. If you remember, for months, even years, the argument was that Joe Biden was sharp. He could clearly do the job. And the minute that he performed poorly in that debate and he became political dead weight, you have Kamala Harris and everybody else trying to throw him overboard. But I think the more troubling question is, why did so many senior Democrats, including the vice president, cover for him? And if Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing the job, as even a lot of Democrats say now, was Kamala Harris in charge or was somebody else in charge? And that's a real issue.
There's no evidence that Kamala Harris threw him overboard. But I want to move on to something that government.
So they always do this with their little slick comments. Because the JD's cooking right now. He's cooking. She knows he's cooking because think about it. She can't really have an answer. So she says there's no evidence. Let's move on. So that way she can please her little liberal crowd.
Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off. The New York Times reports that when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said, not me, they're talking about JD.
Well, certainly they've levied that charge against me more than anybody else. But I think that it drives home how they're trying to distract from their own policy failures. I mean, look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. They can accuse me of whatever they want to accuse me of. As Harry S. Truman once said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm doing this because I think that me being vice president will help improve people's lives. So I accept their attacks, but I think that it is a little bit of projection, Dana. If you think about Just take a couple of days ago, Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife. And I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake.
Oh, he's cooking. Oh, he's cooking. Oh, you guys remember that? When Tim Walz went up to his wife and he gave her a handshake and a hug? Oh, this is good. Okay, he's cooking.
I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it. So I think that what it is two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name calling instead of actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call me whatever they want to.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably were watching at home. And I think that it's projection, Dana. Look, I think this election should be about who's going to solve the inflation crisis, who's going to make groceries and housing more affordable, who's going to secure
policy. Yes, policy. Just talk about the policy. But wait a minute. Can we go back to Tim Walz handshake? My bad, guys. I just got to see it one more time. He says he gave his wife a good old Midwestern handshake. Let's take a look here at what he was talking about. One more time. That's what he was talking about here. Yeah, that's how that. I ain't gonna lie, that's crazy. Doing that to your wife is insane. I ain't gonna lie.
secure that southern border. Kamala Harris's record is that she supported all the policies that made that problem worse, Dana. We're trying to say we're going to take the country in a different direction. I really think that it's important to point this out, Dana. Their entire campaign has not been about, here's our policy for how we're going to make your life better, or here's what's wrong with Donald Trump and JD Vance's policies. We're going to name call and hope that you don't notice that we don't have an agenda. That is the entire Democrat approach to this election.
They have done both. They have both policies, and they are trying to define you as well.
No, they don't. Name a policy. Come on, JD, tell her to name a policy.
They have done both. They have both policies, and they are trying to define you as well.
If you go to Kamala Harris's campaign page right now, they still don't have a policy.
Well, let's talk about
policy positions about what they're going to do. I think that's really.
Oh, she's trying to move on. She's trying to move on.
They still don't have a policy.
Well, let's talk about
policy positions about what they're going to do. I think that's really insulting to Americans.
You started out talking about the policies in this interview, but you have been on the campaign trail questioning Tim Walz's military record. You say it was shameful that Governor Walz retired from.
You don't want to talk about the policies. She just ignored the fact that Kamala still has not come out with a policy. In fact, Kamala's policy is this. She's copying Trump's policy.
Including to raise the minimum wage and eliminate taxes on tips for services. So
that's the only policy that we've heard about, and then she wants to move on to, once again, Tim Walz's military background. But let's see how JD Vance handles this.
Walz's military record. You say it was shameful that Governor Walz retired from the military before his unit deployed to Iraq. I want to read you something that Joe Eustace, who is a veteran, he served with Governor Walz, said. He said that's a lie. He said he was as good a soldier as you'll find. I'm not trying to defend him. I hope people don't think that. What I'm trying to do is defend someone who served his country. I'm not voting for him. I'll campaign against him, but I don't think it's fair to characterize his service the way they have. Governor Walz served 24 years. He even stayed after he could have retired because of 9/11, more than the country asked of him. Do you honor his service?
Well, of course, Dana, I honor his service. And I've never criticized what Tim Walz did when he was in the military. I criticized his retirement decision. And most importantly, Dana, I criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who is captured on video saying, I carried a gun in war. He never went to war. This is a guy who's been captured on video.
Damn. Oh, this is a really good answer. This guy's sharp.
As other people say, he's an Afghanistan veteran. He's a veteran of a war, nodding along in agreement instead of saying, no, 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 I did serve my country and I did it honorably, but I never went to a war zone. I'm not criticizing Tim Walz's service. I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain, Dana. Now, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and you know this. And look, there are a lot of things that I'm proud about. I've never lied about what I did or overstated it because it would be beneficial to me in an election. I think that's what Tim Walz did. That's what I was criticizing. And yes, I do think it's scandalous behavior.
You talked about one of the things that he said, weapons of war. He was
wow. That's a really good answer, but here she goes trying to defend him again.
I do think it's scandalous behavior.
You talked about one of the things that he said, weapons of war. He was talking in a campaign stop about, he was trying to talk about gun control.
Sure.
And he said, weapons of war I carried in war. I will say that the Harris-Walz campaign did say that the governor misspoke there.
Sure.
Do you accept that?
He misspoke. Another word is that he lied about it and he didn't.
Yes, he lied. Like, oh my God, bro. Like, what are we doing? Every time Trump says anything, what does the media do? The media says he lied, that he's going to get fact checked. You guys are covering for Tim Walz lying. Why? But look, man, JD Vance he's handling the heck out of this interview.
The Harris-Walz campaign did say that the governor misspoke there.
Sure.
Do you accept that?
He misspoke. Another word is that he lied about it and he didn't correct the record for 15 years until he was put under political pressure because I called it out, Dana. Whatever you want to call it, a misspeaking or a lie, I think Tim Walz should have to correct the record. Now, you pointed out a soldier who defended his service. There have been a number of soldiers who served with Tim Walz who have criticized him on the exact same grounds that I have because it's not right to misstate or to embellish what you've done. And I think that's what he did.
And on the question of when he left the National Guard, he filed his election paperwork February 10th, 2005. That was a month before the National Guard even announced that it was possible that they would deploy to Iraq. And it ended up being 2 months. He retired 2 months before they actually got the paperwork.
But on CNN last night, Dana, one of the people who was actually in charge of him said they knew they were going to deploy to Iraq in February of 2004. So, or excuse me, fall of 2004. So he knew he was going to Iraq. He decided to quit, to retire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run.
Wow. These people, you don't hate these people enough. I swear you don't. Bro, they are covering, they're on the side of anybody but Trump and his campaign. This is who these people been for a decade. Like, he quit. What? But we're choosing different words. He didn't lie. He misspoke. He didn't quit. He retired. Come on, bro.
Hire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run for Congress. He lied about that. He said that when he decided to retire, he did not know that he was going to Iraq. That is another untruth, as even his senior military officer said. So again, I'm not criticizing the service. I'm criticizing the dishonesty. Dishonesty spoken in favor and for the purpose of political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the vice president. Kamala Harris is in great health. I'm sure she's going to be president if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment. And I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
You know, I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those.
Damn, he's cooking.
Those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans.
Well, we can't criticize people now? Really? That's all your network does.
24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war, and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment. And I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military.
Oh my, yeah. Look, I gotta say, I wasn't familiar with this guy's game. The way he's handling all of this, man, it's such a balance. This guy's good. This guy's good. I mean, he did go to school with Vivek. You guys know how I feel about Vivek.
And I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody.
Wow, they're trying to make this about Trump. They called him a draft dodger, allegedly. I think that's what Jesse Ventura used to be very, very base, but they called him a draft dodger. But once again, whatever you like, once again, it has to always go back to Trump. Unfortunately, I think JD Vance, the way he handled, I really, really want to see how he handles this question. Let's see. I don't know what his answer is going to be.
For my service, Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody, whether they served our country or not. I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
Well,
okay. That's good. Not bad. That's actually really good.
They've corrected that. Let's move on to.
They've corrected it by admitting that
Let's move on to
let's move on. Let's move on. If I was to do one of these interviews, bro, I can't do these interviews. Let's move on. Yeah, let's move on.
Problem to me.
Well, they've corrected that. Let's move on to.
They've corrected it by admitting that.
Let's move on to another important issue to voters, and that is the issue of abortion. You wrote the foreword for a new book by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts of Project 2025. Project 2025, among many other things, calls for rolling back approval of the abortion drug mifepristone. Donald Trump told me during the debate that he would not block the drug, and on Thursday, when he was asked, he didn't rule it out. So which is it?
Well, look, Dana, first of all, Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. Kevin Roberts is a friend of mine, but I wouldn't say that he speaks for the president in the same way I wouldn't say that he speaks for me. Now, what Donald Trump has said is that he respects the Supreme Court's opinion on the mifepristone ruling.
Let me just stop you right there. The
Please.
Supreme Court, you're a lawyer, so you know this better than I.
Sure.
The Supreme Court, all they did was say that what came to them didn't have standing. So they let it stand. A real question, a substantive question, hasn't made it to the Supreme Court. So my question for you is whether or not a Trump-Vance administration would allow mifepristone to continue to be sent around the country.
Well, President Trump won the nomination of the Republican Party. He said it to you, and he said it repeatedly, that his goal is not to block mifepristone. It's to let states make the decision on abortion policy. Now, of course, that does mean, Dana, we have to be honest about this, that California might have less restrictive rules than Ohio, which might have less restrictive rules than Alabama. I think what President Trump is really trying to do on the abortion question is really admirable. And I wish the press was a little bit more honest about it. He's saying we've had a 50-year culture war over abortion, where unfortunately this issue has just divided the country, and he wants to provide some ground for us to come together, for states to make these decisions, for voters to make these decisions, and for us all to respect one another. That's all he's
on
proposed.
that issue.
Wow. Okay. Damn.
On that issue, a few months ago, on the question, his position,
Yeah.
which you've adopted, is it is up to the states. I spoke to a woman named Kate Cox. She lives in Texas.
Sure.
She was 20 weeks pregnant. Her fetus was diagnosed with a disease it was a deadly genetic condition called trisomy 18. She said that carrying the pregnancy, she was told this by her doctors, to term, if the fetus even survived, would hurt her chances for having more children, which she and her husband desperately wanted. Why is not allowing her to end.
Let me ask you guys a question. This example, although is a very terrifying example, which is the reality, it's a reality, but why do they always go to the 1%, the most less likely to happen, though it can happen in this situation it did happen? That's number one. Number two, Trump has said that he has the 3 exceptions, which is inbred, well, incest, the R word, and then what was the 3 exceptions again? I'm having a brain freeze. It was incest, R, and the life of the mother, which in this case would have been the life of the mother.
In that pregnancy, helpful or supportive of expanding families like you want it to be?
Well, first of all, Dana, my heart breaks for this woman. I don't know her personally. I've certainly heard the story, and our heart breaks for her. And we want people to have healthy, happy families. And it's extremely unfortunate that sometimes, medicine, the act of God, whatever happens, just doesn't work out. And what the president has said, I think, very clearly is that he is not trying to prevent women who have non-viable pregnancies from getting access to the medical care that they need.
But allowing the states to decide, a place like Texas, which has very strict laws now, doesn't allow a Kate Cox to end a pregnancy that is fatal and could potentially hurt her ability to have more kids.
But what President Trump has said is that we are going to let voters make these decisions. And again, Texas might have a view that President Trump disagrees with. They might have a view that President Trump agrees with, but you've got to let the voters make these decisions.
So you're comfortable?
Yeah, but New York has different states, different rules and regulations for that. I guess she's going to the Texas example, but you could go to New York as well, right? You go to California, they have different sets of laws.
With that law in Texas,
I'm not comfortable with anything, Dana, because I'm not passing judgment on what these laws should be. You ask me my own personal view. I campaigned against an Ohio referendum, but I think that we have to let voters decide. And when they speak their mind, you have to be respectful. Agree or disagree with whatever voters decide, they're going to make these decisions.
Welcome back to State of the Union. Here's more of my interview with GOP.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, man. Dana Bash is getting cooked here. Like, he's doing something incredible. I'm be honest, man. He's okay. Let's keep going. Should we keep going? Should we watch the whole thing? We only got a few minutes left.
Vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance.
John King is doing a project talking to voters all over swing states. He talked to Republican voters in the critical swing state, must win, I would say, swing state of Pennsylvania.
Of course.
One of them, Carol Carty, said she was almost a childless dog lady because she didn't happen to meet the right person until she was 40 years old.
Oh my God, here we go.
Another, Joan London, was offended that you don't think she has a stake in the future of the country because she doesn't have children. What do you say to key voters like that, Republicans, swing voters? Who are put off by your views?
Well, what I would say, Dana, is if you look at what I said in context, the Harris campaign has frankly lied about what I actually said. I'm pro-family. I want us to have more families. And obviously, sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes for medical reasons, sometimes because you don't meet the right person. But the point is that our country has become anti-family in its public policy. Let me just give you an example of this. So after our second child was born, my wife and I, we have 3 little kids. After our second child was born, we get the baby home from the hospital. We get this ridiculous out-of-network medical bill that is financially shocking, and we're pretty well off. And that happened because we have ridiculous laws in this country that are anti-family. I've sponsored legislation to try to fix things like that so moms and dads don't get these surprise medical bills. I think it's important for us to be pro-family. That's all that I've ever said.
If you want to be pro-family, I want to.
Wow, he just gave a good example of medical bills. And that was a good example, actually.
You do criticize, as you just did, the Democratic Party for being anti-family.
I do.
You called out Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg in particular. Kamala Harris has 2 stepchildren. Pete Buttigieg and his husband have adopted twins. Do you recognize them as parents and more broadly as being part of family?
Of course I do, Dan. I mean, you know life story. I was raised one of the first people that I get incredibly
So she's not childless.
My kids call her ma'am. Of course, she's not childless, but
you
again,
called her that.
the criticism, I certainly did not call my own stepmother childless.
Kamala Harris.
I criticized Kamala Harris for being part of a set of ideas that exists in American leadership that is anti-family. I never, Dan, I criticized people for not having kids. I criticized people for being anti-child.
Wow, so you guys are saying that CNN cut the video? They were cutting parts of the video?
I think that Kamala Harris has made some
anti-child?
bizarre statements. She has said things like it's reasonable not to have children over climate change. I think it's the exact opposite message we should be sending to our
Over climate change? Oh, no.
families. I want to expand the child tax credit. I want to stop those surprise medical bills. I want to make housing more affordable so that if you have a young family, you can actually afford to put them in a home. And I think that it is unfortunate that so much of our public leadership has become anti-family. One final point on this, Dana, if you go back to the COVID era, one thing that really frustrated me and motivated some of these comments is we were at a point where we were kicking kids out of school. We were masking 3-year-olds and putting the masks back on them, even as they were trying to rip them off at school. I think that if we had more people who took the right perspective and had a little bit more understanding of how little kids actually operate, we would not have made so many of those mistakes during COVID.
That's a whole nother conversation. Because
No,
it's
related to this
because
because
people didn't know as much because it was literally a novel
sure,
virus.
But Dana, you asked me about okay. You've now asked me 3 questions about comments that I made 3 years ago. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she supported policies that opened the American southern border. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she lied to the American people about Joe Biden's middle facility for the office.
Yeah, duh. You'll never interview her and you'll never pressure her like this.
You are interviewing me, Dana, because I respect the American people enough to sit down for an interview.
I appreciate that.
Kamala Harris has been the nominee for 3 weeks. She hasn't sat down for a real interview.
Believe me, we are asking. You're not going to get a disagreement there.
But the point is, Dana, you've got me for 15 minutes or however long you have me. We should be talking about public policies that matter. How are we going to lower inflation? How are we going to reduce the cost of food and housing? How are we going to close down that southern border? We've talked so little about that. We've talked a lot more about a sarcastic.
Wow. What? Yo, this is over. He even got her to agree to the fact that Kamala won't even do an interview with them. Whoa, I just got a $300 donation from Heather, bro. What? Whoa, Heather, my goodness. Hold on, guys. Can we look at the finishing touches on this interview? This was beautiful.
Comments that I made 3 years ago. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she supported policies that opened the American southern border. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she lied to the American people about Joe Biden's middle facility for the office. You are interviewing me, Dana, because I respect the American people enough to sit down for an interview.
I appreciate that.
Kamala Harris has been the nominee for 3 weeks.
Oh, he's getting her to admit I appreciate that. Yes, trust me, we've called, we've asked. You won't get me to disagree there. Yo, what is this? Somebody said other YouTube channels are saying otherwise about this interview. Then I don't know what they're watching.
Respect the American people enough to sit down for an interview.
I appreciate that.
Kamala Harris has been the nominee for 3 weeks. She hasn't sat down for a real interview.
Believe me, we are asking. You're not going to get a disagreement there.
But the point is, Dana, you've got me for 15 minutes or however long you have me. We should be talking about public policies that matter. How are we going to lower inflation? How are we going to reduce the cost of food and housing? How are we going to close down that southern border? We've talked so little about that. We've talked a lot more about a sarcastic remark I made 3 years ago. I think we should talk about the issues that most Americans care.
Ding, 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 ding. KO. I got to say, I got to admit it. At first, wasn't really convinced about this guy. Didn't really like this guy at all. I'm giving him a chance. What I'm seeing right now, what I'm seeing right here, right now, it is exactly what the American people always talk about. Let's talk about policy, policy, policy. I don't care. Talk about it's up to us. Leave it up to us. Leave it up to the content creators to talk about the AI crowds. Leave it up to us to talk about people walking out on Kamala. Leave that up to the content creators. Leave that up to the vloggers. You guys, as the guys running for president, running to lead this country, talk about policy. Leave that up to us. Leave the fun stuff. Leave the funny stuff. Leave it up to the people. Trust me, we'll talk about it. It's great content and it's great information, but talk about the policies. I got to say, this was really, really, that was the KO punch right there. And you see she wants to move on. You see she even admitted the fact that, yeah, trust me, we've called them. They're not answering us. So I'm glad that he pointed it out in front of the world that, hey, these guys, these people aren't talking to you guys. You guys should be grateful that we're coming to talk to you guys. So yeah, that's it. I've seen enough. First, I just want to say thank you to Heather for sending $300. That is an insane amount of money. And thank you so much. I appreciate you. Yeah, this is not the middle. This is toward the end. And plus, I've been on here for too long. I'm also in another third world country with a great president by the name of Nayib Bukele, who has done a tremendous job turning this country around. You know what he did? He locked up all the criminals in the government, all the criminals in the streets. That's what he did. He locked them all up, and he's literally reinventing the economy. The people outside are literally motivated to create job opportunities for themselves. But these people out here are legitimately trying to rebuild El Salvador. Their military is amazing. Like, these people are going in the streets. They're working. They're making sure that they're building. The young men and women are literally builders. Like, they're building streets. They're building highways. They're building infrastructure. So I got to see, man. I got to tell you, I would love to see the United States of America do what Nayib Bukele did, man. All right, guys. I love y'all, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much, Heather, for your donation. And smash the like button if you haven't smashed it yet.